Welcome to the Queer Witch Project, your resource for all things queer and witchy. I am Damona Peacock, your fabulous, non-binary, neurospicy, ordained queerdo, with a fascination for all things symbolism, cycles, and patterns.
And I am Moonkittee, a queer femme polykitchen witch and a proud geek. Today's topic is Ostara and the spring equinox.
Yay! We
Oh,
made it!
we made it through winter. It is officially over as of today.
Sorry about it. Sorry, not sorry. I knew once we reached
Yes.
I knew once we reached Imbolc that like we were gonna get there. But
Right.
yeah, it's getting that last part of wintertime is yeah, but oh, Stara season, spring
Right.
equinox.
Yes. So, of course, spring equinox being equinoxes being the balance point where our days and our nights are equal.
Yes.
And this is the spring version versus the fall version of
Where
it.
with fall, we are facing a lot of deathy death stuff, which is
Hmm.
awesome. And in spring, we have a lot of new lifey life stuff and
Right.
vibrancy.
Literal birds and bees.
Yay! Ha ha ha. Not the figurative ones, because we
Not
can't
the
talk about
Beltane figurative birds and bees, which we'll talk about later. But yes,
that.
lots of literal birds and bees and growth and bunnies and all the other butterflies, all that end of hibernation, waterfalls, vernal pools, all the pretty cool,
The
lovely
birds,
green and sparkly things.
the birds are coming back. Everybody's
Yes.
Twitter pated.
Mm-hmm.
I love this time of year.
Mm-hmm.
For sitting outside very quietly, very unassumingly, very eyeballing all of what nature gives me.
Mm-hmm.
I have seen hawks and eagles and raccoons and squirrels and coyotes, all and the deer, all getting
Mm-hmm.
out and doing things this time of year. And I mean, that's just my local wildlife area.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, but whew, Mother Nature, she puts on, this is her fireworks, I think, sometimes. Also, I love when the flowers start blooming and the butterflies and the bees are, you know, very
Mm-hmm.
skittering from place to place again.
Exactly. I think it's interesting you say fireworks show. It's like this is her second fireworks show of the year because fall is also a fireworks show with the color of the changing the leaves, the reds, the
Uh-huh,
oranges.
yeah.
But this is a different. This is a pastel fireworks show. It is lighter colors. It is that beautiful pink that you have in your hair. It is that yeah, the brighter colors. Not that there aren't vibrant colors in springtime, because
Yeah.
again, flowers can be incredibly vibrant in color and everything else. We tend to think of the cooler pastel colors in springtime, just something that's
Yeah.
softer. It gets us out of the cold darks and grays of winter into the lighter, softer colors. Um,
My favorite thing is all of the brown grasses from 6 months ago
mhm,
are vibrantly fresh spring green.
mhm,
And I just, my other favorite thing is I can never have a bad day if the sky has white, puffy clouds and blue sky.
mm,
Like that white, puffy cloud, blue sky kind of day. Like, I'm like, oh, it's going to be a good day. Like, this feels good.
mhm.
Green grass, blue sky, white, puffy clouds. Blessed Ostara, blessed spring equinox.
Yeah.
Can you tell that it's one of my favorite times of year?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Now you named Astara, and I want to slightly off script here a little bit, but I want to talk about Astara as a goddess because this is one of those things that, as we were doing
Mm,
research for this
yeah.
episode, going down a rabbit hole. Because to me, I tend to like, okay, I just said that
Probably a
literally,
literal rabbit
a
hole.
literal rabbit hole. Well, either way, it's a figure rabbit hole. I did not dive into a literal rabbit hole, but a
Your
metaphorical
spirit did.
rabbit hole. My spirit did. But yeah, in the idea of Astara as a goddess and bunnies and eggs and how that all comes together. Because again, for me, I tend to not think of it as Ostara in my witchy practice. I just think of it as a sweet spring equinox.
Mm,
Same thing with the fall equinox and Mabon. I have a hard time thinking of it in its wheel of the year Sabbat form. It's to me, it's a nature cycle. It's that elemental aspect of me that I see.
right.
But
Well, but you know that I was trained as
yes,
a pagan priestess under the ancient traditions of the
yes.
mid 20th century
Mhm. Yes, those
hippie
lovely
hippie pagan
ancient.
movement. Yes.
So I know you tend to think of it as a stara, which is
I do.
great, and there's no wrong answer. Again, with we're pagans, we find our own path and we deal with our own names. But
Yeah.
the naming of a stara as a goddess, and I found it fascinating because, if you may indulge me a little
No, of
bit,
course.
as I was digging through, we tend to think of gods and goddesses being claimed by pantheons. Greek pantheon, Norse pantheon, Celtic pantheon, all that kind of stuff. And Ostara is kind of this outlier.
Hmm.
And in the sense that the closest thing that she has to literature and history written about her was a monk, a Catholic monk in the, I can't remember which century it was, I think 17th or 18th century, talking
Hmm.
about Aestra as Astra March being the month of April, which in Anglo-Saxon and Germanic kind of culture and tradition.
Hmm.
And then Grimm, Jacob Grimm of Grimm's fairy tales and everything else, that folklorist, taking that information and calling it Ostara as a goddess of the spring, as dealing with the what Beatty had wrote as a kind of discussion of, hey, there are festivals and things that are happening around it, and Grimm translating that to be Ostara in his Germanic fairy tales, and then
Hmm.
Ostara taking on a life of her own. And that's one of the things that I found really interesting is she doesn't truly have a pantheon that she belongs to in the way the others do, but she's very definitely become a goddess.
Fascinating. Well, if you name it, does
And you
it
worship
then
it.
become manifest?
Mm-hmm.
Because the funny thing is if you do a Google image search for Ostara, you get this most beautiful artworks of this maiden, beautiful, naturey goddess who is being snuggled by does and fawns and
Mm-hmm.
bunnies and birds and I don't know, chickens with their eggs.
Right.
She's
It's
a spring chicken,
she
Shay.
is a
She's a
spring
spring
chicken.
chicken.
The original spring chicken.
TM. Cannot.
For those of you who don't know what we're talking about, go back and check out the Sacred Sexuality podcast
Yes.
that we did, and you'll understand what we mean by chickens and what time of the year are you. Where are you in your chicken lifestyle cycle? But back to what we're talking about. So yeah, it's really fascinating. But again, she's like I said, that first warm spring winds, the birds
Mm,
returning, all of that
yeah.
kind of thing. So she has become her own goddess, which I think is really cool in the way that we have become to revere and worship her and give her a name.
I also really do think a lot about at this time of year, Persephone in her
Hmm.
Cora form.
Yeah.
You know, the year itself is in maidenhood,
Hmm.
or, also in that like springing to life kind of vibes.
Right.
Um, so there are other, sorts of deities that really ring true as patron saints of this time of year as well.
Hmm. Oh yeah. No, it's definitely those. Any sort of rebirth goddess, a fertility goddess is also of any sort is going to be tied to spring and leading into Beltane. If you have the more sexual aspect of the fertility, it tends to lean toward Beltane, and the newness, the birth, for whatever reason,
Yeah.
tends to be around around the idea of a star, at least from what I spring equinox and what I gather. So there's that kind of idea of Ostara or Astra, goddess of spring and such. And of course, there's that tie in to Easter.
Yes.
And of course, the Christian faith. deals with Easter. The Jewish faith deals with Passover. And of course, those two
Correct.
are entwined very, very closely together. And as we all know, in the idea of Catholicism and early Christianity, because again, it started out as Roman Catholic and then split into the various Christianity sects with
Hmm.
Calvinism and Lutheranism in the Reformism area, which whole nother Christian history. But the idea of early Roman Catholics adopting pagan traditions and incorporating them in, and there is a lot of back and forth in the idea as well. How do we get Easter, which is the rebirth of Jesus, zombie Jesus coming out of the cave with Easter, with bunnies and fruits and laying eggs and all those other kinds of things. And it's actually one of those things. And there's also this really weird, sorry, there's this really weird meme that pops up periodically every Easter or spring season that says Easter is really Ishtar, that the goddess of bunnies. She was a fertility goddess of Assyria and Babylonia, and this is where she is. So it's really Easter, and it's this. It's really funny looking at it because if you think back, just breaking it apart, Easter, the word Easter is English, right?
Hmm.
When Constantine, who's the emperor who's credited for adopting a lot of pagan practices, was roaming and conquering and converting everything.
I like roaming as like Roaming, but also like roaming, like, how often do you think about the Roman Empire?
Exactly. That was far long before
Yeah.
you reached England and the English
Yeah.
language and that kind of stuff. And so in that case, it would have been Pesach, which is tied to Passover in the Jewish tradition. So again, that whole Ishtar, Easter, Babylonia thing, completely debunked outside of the thing. But it still does, Passover and Easter itself still do have ties to the spring equinox, which is why I keep bringing cycling back into
Oh,
this.
that's right.
Because if you don't
It's
know,
based,
Easter is always the first Sunday after the first full moon past spring
af
equinox.
which is so, and Passover is also based off of the
Mhm.
lunar calendar, right?
Exactly, because
So it's
and
so it's based off of the first full moon after the
mhm.
spring equinox too,
Right. So
correct?
that's where Passover is. And then Easter itself is based it's the week after Passover. But again, it still falls within that, or the week of or afterwards, the first Sunday after the first full moon past spring equinox.
So growing up in a culturally Christian society that I grew
Hmm.
up in, I always found Easter really weird
Hmm.
because it's one of those floating holidays.
Right.
Whereas, Christmas is always December
Hmm.
25th, and other
All
holidays are like
Saints' days
that
are always on specific days. Easter is the only one that floated.
because it's based off of somebody else's calendar. Yay! I mean,
Exactly.
that's essentially what it is. But so my first kid is a spring baby,
Hmm.
and was born in early April and did not have their very first Easter because Easter had happened before they were born that year.
Hmm.
And their very first Easter didn't happen until after they were a year old
Hmm.
because Easter happened after their birthday the following year. So I always
Right.
found that was their first Easter, they were already a year old.
Hmm.
Yeah. Floating
It's
holidays are fun.
exactly. No, it's really interesting
But
to think about
the
that.
equinox is always on the same.
Right. So the equinox is
Yeah.
always going to be the same. It's just the lunar cycle. How far in that lunar cycle is where is the moon
Hmm.
at equinox? And that's
Okay,
going to
so
be
if
different every year.
Easter, my
Hmm.
raised Catholic friend over here, if
Hmm.
Easter was about the resurrection of the Christ, and based on Passover, then why in the heck are we having Cadbury bunnies laying eggs, going back, 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 eating chocolate, um, decorating eggs? Like, this is not Jesus stuff, right?
Right. And the answer to that actually goes back to the equinox and Ostara and commercialism, consumerism and capitalism.
And
There's
chocolate.
and chocolate, because again, you gotta sell the stuff, right?
Yeah.
But no, there's actually I found, and again, I'll link all those things that I found earlier, but there's a really cool article in the Library of Congress called from Folklife Today called American Folklife Center and Veterans History Project called Ostara and the Hare. And
Hmm.
it's someone tracing back the idea of Ostara and the bunny. And why, how is this bunny laying eggs? Because bunnies don't lay eggs, birds lay eggs. So there are different things that come back. And the idea is Ostara and the Hare, not ancient, but not as modern. Because we joke constantly about the ancient traditions of the mid-century and the neo-pagan ancient traditions. This particular one kind of comes back, the first story that it can be traced back to falls in the mid to late 1800s. So there
Like the
are
Victorian era.
so the Victorian era, so it's older than the mid 20th century, but
Right.
still not like thousands of years old in the idea. And again, because like all good stories, there's multiple different kinds of translations and interpretations of this.
Yeah.
But essentially, what the story comes down to is Astara and the goddess of spring, because at this point she'd already been established as the goddess of spring.
Hmm.
Um, she is walking about and finds a frozen bird, like a frozen sparrow, some sort of thing. But it's a bird who's been completely frozen. Their wings are frozen. They can't fly. And again, this is where the story can be. She took it in as a companion or she took it in as a lover, depending on how
Hmm.
you want to interpret the story. But
Right.
essentially, she cared for this bird, thawed its wings, and just really kind of took it into her heart and took it in as a symbol of her. So that's the symbol of the birds where you get around Astara. It deals with the birds and things that she did there. But with the transition, there's again the bird becomes her companion. And in one story, she needed to send a message, but for whatever reason, it couldn't fly. So
Hmm.
she turned the bird into a bunny so they could hop along the ground.
Oh,
And of course,
okay.
because they were a bird first and became a bunny, they laid eggs and they laid
Did,
beautiful colored eggs. In
did they go
another
buck, buck, buck,
version,
buck, 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 buck?
that I hate to tell you, it's just strictly capitalism, love.
That's commercialism.
It's commercialism
I'm
and
sorry.
capitalism.
Have echolalia. I
I
was a child
know.
that watched commercials. It worked on me. Those,
It totally, absolutely it's there. But yes, in the other
yeah.
story, it was her lover again. So when the lover was dallying about in spring, as often happens, she got jealous, so she turned it into a
Ooh.
hare. And then
Okay.
the rabbit was so distraught that it couldn't lay its beautiful eggs anymore that she relented and let it lay beautiful eggs once a year. So colored Easter eggs come there. So
That's
different
fun.
versions of the story, but again, that's essentially how we get to the Easter bunny who lays eggs and distributes
Uh,
eggs out
okay.
to children around Easter, Astara, and spring. So
That That's
it
great because I was definitely taught, like, the religious symbolism of Easter, and we celebrated the pagan Ostara traditions. And they
right,
never made sense in my brain, but now they obviously springtime, the symbology of it all is beautiful and does make sense. And I love,
right.
yeah. So speaking of, coloring eggs, what
Hmm.
other traditions do we kind of as witchy folk do? What traditions do we get into this time of year? Other
Uh,
than some people do actually just want to host Ostara rituals.
mhm. Yeah, Astara rituals are great. Again,
I
it's a
had a
great time for
friend,
balancing things. If you're looking at
like
balancing
balancing
things,
your books or
balancing your books, balancing your life, spring cleaning, which we'll talk about in a whole nother Kitchen Witch episode coming up soon. Um,
yes,
but
spring
yeah,
cleaning is very important.
getting out that clutter, starting gardens. It's the time, if we've talked at Imulk, the
Mm-hmm.
planning of what you're going to plant in your garden. Now it's the time to start
The
planting them,
planting,
the
clearing out
actual
your
physical cleaning,
garden.
gardening.
Yeah.
A lot of grounding rituals. now is the time to get grounded into the earth. So with that
Mm-hmm.
planting, with everything else, so just step outside, put your feet on the ground in grass if you can, but some people have sensory issues that it's not a thing, but put your feet on the ground, barefoot preferred,
Yeah.
and step out into that beautiful blue sky with those fluffy
Hmm.
white clouds that you
Yeah.
mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Close your eyes and just feel the sunshine on your skin.
Yeah.
Feel that moment of just being in that moment with life and all of it.
I have a friend who would make, when we did do rituals, we would always potluck it.
Mhm.
And they brought a giant salad, and the whole top layer were edible flowers of some kind or another.
Ooh, nice. Yeah.
So edible flower
Mm-hmm.
salads.
Exactly.
And
Color.
also, yeah, art. I would
Mm-hmm.
do art,
Mm-hmm.
like just like we did for Imbolc. I would keep if not coloring the Easter eggs, some kind of other art
Mm-hmm. Creative outlet
forms.
of some sort, however
Yes,
that may
right.
be.
Because that's
Um,
again that, we don't need to be talking about literal fertility, but
mm-hmm.
figurative symbolic fertility
Mm-hmm.
is channeling a creative energy and bringing something to birth into the world.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. You can also, this is a great time if you are a dew collector. So you can collect morning dew for ritual work if that's
Mm,
a portion of your practice. Um,
beautiful.
just like you would for moon water, you can collect rainwater, you can collect spring water, fresh spring water if you're out
Mm-hmm.
there and use that in kind of ritual aspects. Um,
This is my favorite time of year, that you'll get a really good windy day and
uh-huh.
just go harness the wind and fly a kite like Mary Poppins
Yes,
taught me.
absolutely. Let's go fly a kite. I
Yes.
love it. It's so much fun.
Uh-huh. And that can be super magical.
Yes. So just watch it dancing and diving and everything in
And
there.
like
So
feeling
there's
it tugging and just like being one with the wind.
hmm
Mm-hmm.
I used to love going to the beach around springtime and the winds would kick through
Yeah.
and I would have because it's still cool enough that you're usually wearing a longer sleeve and just opening it up and just letting it flap and just blow through and I became the kite basically at that point
I
in time.
am the kite.
I am
I
the
like,
kite.
yeah,
I
I
am not
definitely
flying, but I am the kite.
I, I watch people who put GoPros on their helmets and fly off cliffs in squirrel suits.
hmm
I just like watching their videos because it's like, ah.
Right?
And I don't have to, it's like, for me because it's not for me. 'Cause if it were me, like really, there would be,
It'd be
yeah,
terrifying, yes.
terrifying,
But no,
but
it's
it's
so
beautiful.
it's cool. There's so many cool things that you can do around Ostara, around that spring equinox, around all of this coming into the longer days, the warmth coming back. You start wearing more tank tops or t-shirts and stuff that's a little bit looser and you're not bundled up quite as much.
Yay.
I mean, I
And the
am all for
warmth is
good
coming
cozy,
back.
but it's
Yes.
nice to have the warmth.
It is. It is nice to have the warmth. And what are we doing for our queer community, this is Stara?
And this
How
is
are we
one that's
serving?
it's a star is a little bit harder to identify as queer for
I
for
mean,
some
I
reason.
do feel like it's Mother Nature is shining radiance, so I do feel like there's for me a
Hmm
bit an element of the worship of the feminine divine, which isn't
Right.
necessarily queer, but I mean
hmm
for me it can be.
It can be, yes. It can be very queer. But like that's what I'm saying.
um
It's not it doesn't compared to others that truly
yeah.
have more of an obvious queer connotation to them. This one doesn't quite have as an obvious one, but like you said, it's about nature and nature is all over the spectrum of queerness,
Well, and also
naturally
that
psychological or naturally biologically and everything else. There's a lot of different queerness naturally occurs, and so it's just part of the natural cycle in there.
I would
So
also think of it like as that connection of to life and vibrancy and
hmm
coming out of hibernation and
hmm
maybe getting back into your social circles and the patios of, you know, gathering spaces are opening up and it's
right.
warm enough to hang out again. So I would just think, getting back into connection and
hmm
life and vibrancy. in your communities is a good way to queer in
Hmm.
Ostara,
Grab your
so to
queer
speak.
friends and go on spring break.
Yeah, spring break.
Right?
Yeah, plan
Just
something.
exactly. Community um, trips, things like that, where you can enjoy the weather before it gets too hot.
And I
Those
totally want
moments.
to say like the uh divine masculine equivalent of the maiden
Hmm.
archetypal aspect would be the twink, the queer divine masculine. Go adopt a twink and take them out for dancing for a night or something.
Adopt a twink. We'll start. Start.
Right. Adopt a twink. That's what I'm doing for a star. What are you doing for a star? No. uh throw, throw makeup on somebody's
Yeah.
face. Yeah. Photo
Invite them to
shoots.
color.
Oh, photo shoot. But don't, okay, really quickly. Yes, photo shoots. Do not tramp the flowers.
And make sure you're consenting if you're getting other people in your photos.
Yeah, that's deep for reals. But I always get, I love the super blooms. I just feel like you should
Yes.
stick to the trails and don't just go sit on the flowers because it makes a good Instagram photo. Yes, go photo
Yeah.
shoot. Don't trample the flowers. That makes
Mm-hmm.
my heart sad. Look at the like sad little bugs that need those flowers, and
Mm-hmm.
the plants are the sad. And we don't want to make sad plants and sad bugs. It's springtime. We should be happy. Okay.
Yes. Don't squish the flowers.
This has been your PSA from Damona.
Go thank a bee.
Yeah, because we wouldn't have food.
Exactly. Go thank a
Yeah.
bee.
Yeah.
Um,
Plant uh some people who do start their spring gardens will specifically go out and do research to start with the the ones that'll blossom early on,
mhm,
like dandelions, I believe.
mhm. Other, yeah,
Um,
early pollinators.
Early pollinators, that's the one, for that
Mhm.
they're very important to have on hand this time of year.
Right. And we talked about random acts of beauty, throwing out
Right.
wildflower seeds and other
Edible,
things that can grow. But again,
native.
with that,
Do
make
your
sure they're native.
research. Yes, yes. Responsible acts of chaos goblin naturey.
Exactly.
Yeah. I just think that those are some beautiful ways to queer our
Hmm.
Astara. Yeah.
Exactly.
Are we
But
forgetting
as
anything?
I can't think of anything. It's one of those, this is just, it's about community. Get together with your
Yes.
communities
Grow.
and
What are you
grow,
growing? What are
plant.
you planting? What are you putting into action that you have been planning this year? Start figuring out your first steps.
This is the balance and the tipping point into
Yeah, a
growth.
busier time of year.
Yes.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I
Hmm.
love it.
I do
You're
too.
so starred out in your green. I like it.
Had to go with the theme, right?
Yes, you're a magical goddess. I'm here for
But
it.
I love it. Anyway, so I can't think of anything else.
Yay.
Have I missed anything? Have you missed anything?
Yeah, I have clicked all of my boxes.
All right.
So,
So,
with that said, I would just like to say thank you for listening to the Queer Witch Project. And if you like what you've heard, make sure you give us one of those, like, thumbs up or stars or reviews or comments, anything that, like, helps bring some algorithm traction to our whatever this is.
and if there is a topic you would like to know more about or an episode that you would like to suggest, please contact us at thequeerwitchproject@gmail.com or find us on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram with the handle at Queer Witch Project. We upload every other week. And
Yay.
remember, queerness is a key to magic.
Be yourself and love rebelliously. Bye.